The kingdom of Xandor was a land of warriors, known for its rich history, powerful rulers, and deep connection to magic. Nestled between vast mountains and lush green valleys, it thrived under the rule of King Jomo, a wise and just leader. The people of Xandor respected strength, but they also valued kindness, a trait embodied by Princess Naya, the only daughter of King Jomo and Queen Sophia. Naya was beloved by the people, not only for her beauty, but for her compassionate heart. From a young age, she spent time among the common folk, helping the poor and learning the traditions of her land. Many believed she would one day become a ruler as great as her father. However, tragedy struck the kingdom when Queen Sophia fell gravely ill. The royal healers tried everything, but no cure could save her. Within days, she passed away, leaving the kingdom in mourning. The loss was especially hard on Naya, who was only 12 at the time. She clung to her father, the only family she had left, as he struggled to rule while grieving his beloved wife. For a time, Xandor felt the weight of sorrow. But King Jomo knew he had to stay strong for his daughter and his people. Not long after the queen's death, a woman named Lady Kalinda arrived at the palace. She was beautiful and graceful, with a charm that captivated the king. She spoke of her noble lineage, her love for the kingdom, and how she could bring happiness back into the royal family. Desperate to fill the void left by his wife, King Jomo married Lady Kalinda within a year. At first, she seemed kind and devoted, but her true nature soon revealed itself. Lady Kalinda had a daughter of her own, Zaria, a girl who was Naya's age. She quickly made it clear that she wanted Zaria to be the future queen, not Naya. She saw Naya as a threat to her own ambitions, and beneath her polite smiles, she harbored deep resentment. Whenever the king was present, she played the role of a loving stepmother, but in his absence, she made sure Naya felt unwelcome in her own home. At first, Naya tried to win her stepmother's affection, believing that kindness would soften her heart. She was patient with Zaria, offering her friendship, but Zaria followed her mother's lead and treated Naya as an enemy. Slowly, the palace that once felt like home became a place of isolation for the young princess. As the years passed, Lady Kalinda's influence over the king grew stronger. She whispered in his ears, planting seeds of doubt about Naya's ability to rule. Meanwhile, she positioned Zaria as the perfect heir, always by her father's side, learning the ways of the court. Nia, once adored, was now pushed to the background. But Lady Kalinda's hatred was not satisfied with simply making Nia feel like an outsider. She wanted to ensure that the princess would never claim the throne. And for that, she needed a plan. Lady Kalinda had always known that as long as Princess Nia remained in the palace, she was a threat to her daughter's future. The people still loved Naya, and despite being pushed into the shadows, she carried herself with quiet strength. Kalinda needed to remove her permanently, ensuring that Zaria would be the only rightful heir to the throne. She began her plan by whispering doubts into the ears of the noble families and advisors. At first, she subtly questioned Nia's ability to rule, suggesting that she was too soft-hearted, too weak to lead a kingdom built on strength. When that wasn't enough, she planted a more dangerous idea. Nia was cursed. Rumors spread like wildfire. Servants gossiped in hushed tones, speaking of strange omens surrounding the princess. Some swore they had seen shadows moving unnaturally around her, while others claimed her mother's death was an early sign of misfortune. Lady Kalinda fed these fears, telling trusted advisors that she had seen Naya speak to spirits in the halls at night. Superstitions ran deep in Xandor, and soon even the common folk began to believe that something dark surrounded the princess. While this was happening, King Jomo's health began to decline. Once a strong and mighty ruler, he now spent his days confined to his chambers, too weak to make decisions. The royal healers tried everything, but his condition only worsened. Unbeknownst to anyone, Lady Kalinda had been poisoning him in small doses, making sure he remained too ill to protect his daughter. With the king unable to intervene, Naya was more vulnerable than ever. When Lady Kalinda sensed that the time was right, she approached Naya with a fabricated tale. She told her that the royal priests had foreseen a dark fate for the kingdom, and that the only way to cleanse herself and restore balance was to embark on a sacred journey. According to Kalinda, it was a tradition passed down by the ancestors, one that only a true queen could complete. If Nia succeeded, she would return stronger, and all doubts about her right to rule would be erased. Nia hesitated. Something about her stepmother's words didn't feel right, but with the king too weak to give her guidance, she had no one to turn to. The court, now entirely under Kalinda's control, supported the idea, reinforcing the belief that this was the only way to prove herself. After days of persuasion, Naya finally agreed. What she didn't know was that there was no sacred journey. The path she was being sent on led straight to the Shadow Forest, a cursed land where few who entered ever returned. The forest was home to wild beasts, ancient spirits, and dark forces that had been sealed away for centuries. Kalinda was confident that once Naya stepped inside, she would never find her way back. With a heavy heart, but determined to prove herself, Naya set out on the journey, unaware that she was walking straight into a trap, one that had been carefully designed to ensure she never returned. Naya rode away from the palace, her heart heavy with uncertainty. Accompanied only by a handful of Kalinda's trusted guards, she followed the path her stepmother had chosen for her. As they reached the edge of the Shadow Forest, the guards suddenly halted. "This is where we leave you, princess," one of them said coldly. Before Naya could question them, they turned and rode away, leaving her alone. A chill ran down her spine as she turned to face the looming trees. The air was thick and damp, filled with eerie whispers carried by the wind. Shadows twisted unnaturally between the branches, and the dense canopy blocked out most of the sunlight. Every instinct in her body screamed for her to turn back, but she had no choice. Steeling herself, she stepped forward into the unknown. The moment she crossed the threshold of the forest, it was as if the world had changed. The silence was suffocating, broken only by the distant howls of unseen creatures. The ground beneath her feet was uneven, littered with sharp rocks and tangled roots. She walked cautiously, every step feeling like a mistake. As night fell, the forest came alive with glowing eyes peering at her from the darkness. Suddenly, a low growl echoed through the trees. Nia's breath caught in her throat as she spotted a pair of glowing amber eyes creeping closer. A massive black panther emerged from the shadows, its sleek body moving like liquid darkness. It stalked toward her, muscles tensed, ready to pounce. Naya turned and ran, branches whipped against her face, her feet stumbling over the uneven ground. The beast was faster. She could hear it closing in. Just as she felt its breath on her back, the ground beneath her gave way, and she tumbled down a steep slope, landing hard on the cold earth below. Dazed and disoriented, she struggled to sit up. The panther prowled along the edge of the cliff, growling in frustration. But before it could leap down, a sharp whistle pierced the air. A flaming arrow shot through the darkness, striking the ground before the beast. With a snarl, it turned and vanished into the trees. Nia blinked in confusion as an old woman stepped out from the shadows, leaning on a wooden staff. Her hair was silver, her dark skin wrinkled with age, but her eyes burned with an intensity that sent a shiver down Nia's spine. "You are not meant to die here, child," the woman said, her voice firm yet kind. Nia stared at her, too stunned to speak. The woman extended her hand. "Come, you have much to learn." Weary and without another choice, Nia took the woman's hand. That night, in a small hut deep within the forest, the woman introduced herself as Mama Jua. She tended to Nia's wounds and fed her, then sat across from her with a knowing smile. "You have the blood of warriors," Mama Jua said. "Your mother was not just a queen, she was a legend, and so shall you be." The days that followed were unlike anything Nia had ever known. Mama Jua led her through the dense forest, deeper than she thought possible, until they arrived at a hidden village nestled between towering cliffs and flowing waterfalls. Unlike the grand palaces of Xandor, this place was built with nature. Wooden huts blended seamlessly with the trees, and warriors moved with quiet precision, their eyes sharp and alert. At the heart of the village stood a powerful figure, Chief Baraka, leader of the hidden warrior tribe known as the Mji village of the lion. His presence was commanding, his body covered in ritual scars that told the story of his battles. He studied Nia with a gaze that felt like it could see into her soul. "She is weak," one of the warriors muttered. "She has potential," Mama Jua corrected. "She is the daughter of Queen Sophia. The blood of warriors runs in her veins." Nia's heart pounded. She had never considered herself a warrior, only a princess meant to rule with wisdom and kindness. But after being abandoned, hunted, and betrayed, she realized that wisdom alone would not save her. She needed strength. Thus began her training. At sunrise, she ran barefoot across the rough terrain, her feet blistered and aching. She learned to fight with her hands first. Chief Baraka insisted that a warrior without a weapon must still be deadly. She sparred against trained fighters, each session leaving her bruised and exhausted. By midday, she practiced with weapons. The warriors of Mji were masters of the spear, the bow, and the blade. At first, Naya could barely lift a sword without fumbling, but as the days turned to weeks, her body adapted. Her hands, once soft and delicate, grew calloused. Her reflexes sharpened. The girl who had once worn silk robes now stood in warrior's leather, her muscles aching from hours of relentless training. But her transformation was not just physical. Mama Jua had more to teach her. One evening, after a grueling day of combat drills, Mama Jua led Naya to a secluded cave lit only by flickering torches. Strange symbols lined the walls, and in the center, a small fire burned, crackling with an unnatural blue flame. "Your mother knew the old ways," Mama Jua said, motioning for Naya to sit. "Before she was queen, she trained in the magic of our ancestors. That power is within you, waiting to be awakened." Nia hesitated. Magic was feared in Xandor, often seen as dangerous and unpredictable. But if it was part of her bloodline, then perhaps it was the key to reclaiming what was stolen from her. Mama Jua placed her hands on Naya's temples and whispered ancient words. Heat surged through Naya's body, her vision blurring as she felt something stir deep inside her, something powerful. "You are ready to begin," Mama Jua whispered. For the first time in her life, Nia did not feel afraid. She felt strong. She felt unstoppable. Months passed, and Nia was no longer the fragile princess who had stumbled into the shadow forest. Under the brutal training of Chief Baraka and the mystical guidance of Mama Jua, she had transformed into a warrior. Her body was lean and strong, her movements swift and precise. She could wield a sword with deadly accuracy, shoot an arrow from horseback, and track enemies through the dense jungle without making a sound. But it was not just her body that had changed. Her mind had hardened too. Gone was the girl who once sought love from a stepmother who despised her. Now she carried only one purpose: to reclaim what was rightfully hers. One evening, as Naya sat sharpening her blade, a scout from the hidden village returned from Xandor with grim news. Lady Kalinda had seized full control of the kingdom. The king, once a mighty ruler, was now barely clinging to life, his body wasting away from an unknown illness. With his mind clouded by poison and deceit, he had unknowingly signed a decree naming Zaria as his heir. The coronation was set to take place in a matter of weeks. A heavy silence fell over the camp as Naya absorbed the betrayal. Kalinda had never intended to let Naya return. She had stolen her throne, her father, and her kingdom. The time for patience had passed. "I will not let her win," Naya declared, her voice ringing with new authority. "Xandor is my home, and I will take it back." Chief Baraka studied her for a long moment. Then a slow, proud smile spread across his face. "The princess has become a lioness," he said. That night, Naya stood before the gathered warriors, the firelight casting flickering shadows across her determined face. For too long, Xandora has been ruled by deceit, she said, her voice strong and unwavering. Lady Kalinda has poisoned my father, stolen my throne, and turned my people against me. But she does not know the storm that is coming. She thinks I am lost, but I have returned, stronger than she ever imagined. Murmurs of approval swept through the warriors. They had watched Naya rise from weakness to strength, from exile to leadership. They had seen her bleed, fight, and never give up. She was no longer just a princess, she was one of them. Chief Baraka stepped forward and knelt before her, pressing a fist to his chest. "We fight for you, Princess Nia of Xandora." One by one, the warriors followed his lead, pledging their loyalty. Nia felt the weight of responsibility settle over her, but she embraced it. This was her destiny. She was no longer the lost girl wandering the shadow forest. She was a warrior. She was a queen. And she was going home. As dawn broke over the shadow forest, Nia and her warriors set out on their journey back to Xandora. Dressed in simple cloaks to blend in with travelers and merchants, they moved like shadows through the dense terrain. The path was treacherous, but Nia was no longer the helpless princess who had once been cast away. She was a warrior now, and nothing would stop her from reclaiming her throne. For days, they travelled under the cover of darkness, avoiding the main roads where Lady Kalinda's soldiers patrolled. When they finally reached the borders of Xandora, a painful realization struck Nia. The kingdom she once knew, the land her father had ruled with wisdom and strength, was now a shadow of itself. The once thriving villages were now filled with despair. Crops had withered, merchants' stalls stood empty, and the streets were lined with beggars. Soldiers in Kalinda's colours patrolled aggressively, striking fear into the hearts of the people. Statues and banners of King Jomo had been torn down and replaced with symbols of Kalinda and Zaria. It was as if the true royal family had been erased from history. "She has destroyed everything," Naya whispered, her fists clenching. Mama Jua, who had come along as both guide and mentor, placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "The people suffer, but they have not forgotten their true princess. We will remind them." As they moved through the villages, Naya listened to the whispers of the people. Many believed she had died in the forest, lost to the spirits. Some still lit candles in her honor, mourning the princess they had once loved. It was in one of these villages that Naya first revealed herself, carefully, in secret. Disguised in a hooded cloak, she entered a small gathering where villagers whispered of their struggles. A young woman named Amani, who had once served in the palace, spoke with quiet fury. "They think we are weak," Amani said. "Lady Kalinda and Zaria rule with cruelty, while the king withers away. But if Princess Naya were alive, if she returned—" Nia stepped forward, lowering her hood. Gasps filled the room. "She has returned," Naya said. Amani fell to her knees, eyes wide with disbelief. "It's true. You're alive," the villagers whispered among themselves, hope rekindling in their eyes. Naya did not waste time. She told them of Lady Kalinda's lies, of how she had been sent to die, and of the warriors she had gathered to reclaim Xandora. Word spread quickly. In the coming days, blacksmiths, hunters, farmers, and even former palace guards secretly pledged themselves to Nia's cause. They were not trained soldiers, but they had something more powerful: faith in their rightful queen. As the army of rebels grew, Nia knew that the time for secrecy was ending. She would no longer hide in the shadows. It was time to take back her home. The moment had come. The streets of Xandora buzzed with tension as people gathered in the central square, drawn by whispers of an impending announcement. At the grand balcony of the palace, Lady Kalinda stood in regal attire, her golden robes shimmering in the sunlight. Beside her, Zaria wore a smug smile, basking in her stolen power. Soldiers lined the streets, their weapons at the ready to crush any rebellion before it began. Then, the crowd gasped. A lone figure stepped onto the square, hooded and cloaked in warrior's leather. With steady hands she pulled back the hood, revealing a face long thought lost to the wilderness. Princess Nia had returned, A stunned silence filled the air. For a moment, no one spoke. No one moved. Then the whispers began. "It's her! The princess is alive! She has come back for us!" Lady Kalinda's smile faltered, but she quickly composed herself, stepping forward with a sneer. "This is an impostor," she declared, her voice ringing with false confidence. "The real Naya perished in the cursed forest. This woman is a fraud, a witch come to deceive you." Naya did not flinch. She stepped forward and raised her voice so that all could hear. "My people, you know me. You remember the daughter of King Jomo, the princess who walked among you, not hidden away in silk and jewels, but among her people." She turned, her sharp eyes scanning the crowd. "Look around you. Has Xandor thrived under Lady Kalinda, or has it suffered?" A murmur spread through the crowd. They had seen their lands wither, their loved ones punished, their homes crumbling under the rule of Lady Kalinda and Zaria. The doubt Kalinda tried to plant in their minds could not take root. "She lies!" Kalinda hissed. "Seize her!" Before the guards could move, a warrior's horn echoed through the square. Naya's forces surged forward, emerging from alleyways, rooftops, and hidden corners. The battle for Xandora had begun. Chaos erupted. Nia's warriors clashed with Kalinda's guards, swords ringing, arrows flying. Citizens who had suffered under Kalinda's rule joined the fight, turning on the soldiers who had oppressed them. The once grand palace square became a battlefield. In the midst of the battle, Nia's focus remained on one goal: Kalinda. She fought her way through the chaos, cutting down guards with precise strikes. When she reached the palace steps, Kalinda stood waiting, her own sword drawn. "You should have stayed in the forest, little princess," Kalinda snarled. "You have no idea who you're facing." Naya's grip on her blade tightened. "I am not the girl you cast away." With that, she lunged, and the final battle began. Steel clashed against steel, as Naya and Lady Kalinda fought atop the palace steps, their battle raging, while the chaos of war consumed the square below. Kalinda was skilled, far more than Naya had expected, but Naya was stronger. Every swing of her sword carried the weight of months of training, every step fueled by the pain of betrayal. "You were never meant to rule," Kalinda spat, parrying a heavy blow. "You're weak, just like your mother." Naya's fury ignited. She spun, disarming Kalinda with a sharp strike that sent her sword clattering down the steps. Kalinda stumbled back, her chest rising and falling in panicked breaths. The once powerful Queen Regent, always in control, was now cornered. The battle in the square was ending. Nia's warriors had won. Kalinda's guards either lay defeated or had surrendered, and the people of Xandora were cheering the return of their true princess. But Kalinda was not one to accept defeat. With a sudden movement, she turned and bolted towards the palace's secret escape passage, a hidden door behind the throne. Naya raced after her, chasing her through the dark corridors she knew so well. Kalinda ran blindly, desperate to flee, but in her panic, she failed to remember one crucial detail. This passage was once a trap meant for intruders. The moment she stepped into the final chamber, the floor gave way beneath her. She screamed. Nia skidded to a stop at the edge of the pit, watching as Kalinda dangled from a crumbling ledge. Below her, jagged spikes gleamed in the dim light. "Nia!" Kalinda gasped, fear flashing in her eyes for the first time. "Help me!" For a moment, Naya hesitated. This woman had tried to destroy her, poison her father, and steal her kingdom. She had shown no mercy, no kindness. But Naya was not Kalinda. She extended her hand. "Take it!" Kalinda hesitated too long. The ledge crumbled beneath her fingers, and with a final piercing scream, she fell, swallowed by the very trap she had once set for others. It was over. The kingdom erupted in celebration. Naya emerged from the palace steps, the weight of victory settling over her shoulders. The people knelt before her, tears of joy in their eyes. "Long live Queen Naya," they chanted, their voices filling the air. But as the dust settled, another figure stepped forward, Zaria. Kalinda's daughter. Tears streamed down her face as she fell to her knees. "I was blind," she whispered. "I believed my mother's lies, but I see the truth now. Please, I beg for mercy." Nia studied her, searching for deceit, but all she saw was fear and regret. "You were raised in your mother's shadow," Nia said, "but your choices from this day forward will be your own." Instead of punishment, she extended forgiveness. Zarya sobbed with relief. The people cheered louder. Nia had reclaimed her throne, but more importantly, she had proven herself a just and noble queen. With Lady Kalinda gone and her forces defeated, Xandora was free at last. But the battle was only the beginning. Now, it was time to rebuild. Nia stood atop the palace balcony, gazing at the city below. The streets, once filled with fear, were now alive with laughter, music, and celebration. The people rejoiced, not just because an evil queen had fallen, but because they had regained a leader who truly cared for them. Her first act as queen was justice. Those who had oppressed the people under Kalinda's rule were held accountable, while those who had remained loyal, blacksmiths, farmers, warriors, and palace servants who had secretly resisted Kalinda's tyranny, were honored for their courage. Many of the former guards and nobles had fled, but Nia did not seek revenge. Instead, she focused on creating a fairer kingdom, one where no child would suffer as she had. She reformed the laws, ensuring that power would never again be concentrated in the hands of a single ruler without accountability. The people's voices would be heard, and advisors would be chosen not by bloodline, but by wisdom and merit. Nia also revived the warrior traditions of her ancestors. The secret warriors who had trained her, the Mei Wasimba, were no longer hidden in the shadows. Instead, she invited them to become the official protectors of Xandora, ensuring that the kingdom would always be defended by those who valued honor over greed. Zarya, the daughter of Kalinda, chose to stay. She had lost her mother, but Nia did not exile her. Instead, she gave Zarya a role in rebuilding the kingdom. Humbled and eager to redeem herself, Zarya dedicated her life to helping the people she once overlooked. Then came the grand coronation. The palace gates were opened, welcoming villagers, merchants, warriors, and nobles alike. No one was turned away. This was a celebration for all of Xandora. Dressed in ceremonial robes, Nia walked through the palace courtyard, where the elders of Xandora, warriors, and leaders from neighboring lands gathered. Mama Juar and Chief Baraka stood at the front, their eyes gleaming with pride. Amani, the young woman who had first rallied the people in secret, placed the royal crown upon Nia's head. "Kneel before Queen Nia," she declared, her voice strong and clear. As Nia stood, the crowd erupted in cheers. "Long live the warrior queen!" drums thundered, dancers twirled in celebration, and the sky filled with colourful banners. But even in the midst of the celebration, Nia never forgot. She was not just a ruler, but a protector, a survivor, a warrior. And as she looked out at her people, she vowed that Xandora would never again fall into darkness. Years passed, but the legend of Queen Nia never faded. From the bustling streets of the capital to the quietest villages of Xandora, storytellers gathered under the stars to recount the tale of the warrior princess who had reclaimed her throne. Children listened with wide eyes, warriors spoke her name with pride, and elders whispered that she had been chosen by fate to restore balance to the land. Nia did not rule with an iron fist, nor did she sit idly on a golden throne. She led by example. She personally oversaw the rebuilding of Xandora's cities, ensuring that every village prospered, not just the wealthy and powerful. She established schools so that knowledge could be passed to all, not just the privileged few. And she trained the next generation of warriors, not just to fight, but to protect, to serve, to uphold justice. Among them were young girls who had once been overlooked, now wielding swords and staffs, learning the ways of combat and leadership. The tradition of the Anjiwasimba, the hidden warriors who had saved Nia's life, became an official part of Xandora's royal guard. The once fractured kingdom flourished under her reign. Trade flourished, peace endured, and the people knew prosperity. Neighboring lands that once looked down upon Xandora as weak now sought alliances, recognizing the wisdom and strength of its warrior queen. But of all the voices that had once shaped her journey, there was one prophecy that had yet to be fulfilled. Mama Jua's words on the night Nia had first entered the shadow forest. "You will not just survive, child. You will become the greatest ruler Xandora has ever known." As the years passed and Nia watched her kingdom thrive, she realized the prophecy had come true. One evening, she sat with Mama Yua in the royal gardens, the elder woman now frail but still sharp as ever. "You see now, don't you?" Mama Yua chuckled softly, sipping her tea. "You were never meant to be just a princess. You were always destined to be a queen." Nia smiled, gazing out at the golden horizon, where the sun set over a kingdom at peace. The world would remember many rulers, many battles, many victories. But only one story would live forever, the story of a princess cast into exile, who returned not as a victim, but as a warrior. The legend of Nia, the warrior queen, would never be forgotten.